Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's episode. It's a windy day and hopefully my voice will be audible. But I wanted to talk about a very interesting idea that arose to me, but also something that has a unique audience. So this episode is not for everyone. This episode is for those people who in some sense are fascinated about their inner realms, their imagination. They want to know what it is, how do you in some sense use it, and what I have pinpointed, something I have noticed is that there is a very unique thing human beings are doing with their imagination but not recognizing it, as if some ideas are very powerful but the idea is locked in the wrong context. And what that means is words do not just own people, they own images. What that means is it is in some sense we are like an antenna, and how images teleport behind our eyes and in front of them is through sound and communication. And there is something important about communication that in some sense in this lifetime has to be noticed. We're not here to be just an object. When this object after 4.5 billion years of evolution has become a subject to itself, there is something important taking place. So, a sudden extreme advancement of inner realm contact. The concept of contact is one that fascinates me personally because, not that I need contact, but in some sense the reason it fascinates me is because it is in some sense minds bridging space. And so communication or conversation is in some sense inner realm sharing or inner realm co-creation, as if when two, let's say person A and person B are talking outside, when person A talks to person B, person A is speaking in the inner world of their eyes. What that means is what kind of life they have lived, how they have lived, how they are. There is no such thing as getting an impression from a person when people communicate, it is in some sense world sharing. And so we are internally 8 billion plus different worlds, different human beings looking at the world, but externally we are in one common outer realm, in one physical landscape. That means we are the multidimensional in the singular, and there is an opportunity that comes with that. We as beings in this universal sector have solidity, we have form, we have a database, we have in some sense a shape which allows memories to activate, So I would begin by saying, first of all, what do I mean by a sudden extreme advancement? What I mean by a sudden extreme advancement is a collective realization. That means before me talking about inner realm contact, I would say that what would a sudden extreme advancement look like? Let's say you are, an owner of a company. Then you suddenly find business and you run into your company and you shout at the employees, we got customers, and when that call comes, the people in any environment that there's a significance to the environment that's necessary to function, people wake up, people activate, that inner realm effort becomes apparent in the outer realms. You can say, imagine there is mustard. Imagine there's mustard on the face of a species, and you suddenly say, hey species, you got mustard on your face, and the whole species is required to look beyond the ego. is there's a calling, there is something that we're waiting for it to happen. How long can we be watchers from the sky of humanity? For the space, its purpose is to allow form to be alone with itself. That means the higher dimensions of human intelligence are not human, they are formless, and we are going there as a species, but we don't realize it because it's honestly too soon to talk about. A sudden inner advancement is like a command coming into a room, or in some sense the general shouting at the commanding officers shouting at the soldiers, and the soldiers shouting at the enemy. Warfare is as chaotic as it is, simultaneously it is also hilarious. But I am speaking about a relationship where communication's significance is met in the moment, and the moment shifts. So what that means is, imagine there's a dinner table, people are eating at the dinner table, a big family. Suddenly this one of the family members runs in the house and says, "Yo, there's fireworks happening outside. Oh my God." And all the family members in that instant, whatever, if they're drinking soup, if they got gravy on their face or whatever, they all run outside to see that firework. And imagine showing fireworks to cavemen. It's just going to shout at the sky like this. But what I'm saying is that something like a sound or an event calls our attention forth. And this is very crucial to know, especially when you individualize. That means there isn't a lot of options for individual entities on this planet. You either remain individual, you either in some sense become nothing. This individuality can become everything, and not worst case scenario, but another scenario would be your individualism accesses infinitude. And when your individualism accesses infinitude, you become in some sense the witness of your own archetype till the end of time, because you have generated it. You have put it forth into the realm. There's this Chinese quote, I think it was by Confucius, but I'm not sure. This quote was saying that everybody, it was a proverb, let's say Chinese proverb. In it was like everybody is connected by a red invisible string. That means we are all interconnected right now. But we are so unaware of it that a person has to give a podcast. It's like we're telepathic, but, podcasting is something. Being telepathic means that we are all in the same intelligence server. We are found in the same moment. We all have a relationship with existence. I don't know anybody who doesn't have a relationship with existence, and if they truly don't, they're not here. That means this is a certain room. Who are we kidding? We can't say this is everything, We're like an ant on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and in some sense, there are people passing by this rock and being like, look at these ants, having no clue that we're calling them ants. Sometimes I feel animals in the future will become conscious, and they will suddenly get shocked in realizing we have given them names, What that means is like, imagine an ant becoming conscious and being like, are you guys calling me an ant? How dare you? So imagine like cats and dogs. It's like, who you calling a cat? Claws come out. So imagine human beings are by some superior intelligence being called like, I don't know, like some sort of whatever name. Like, look at these, what's a good, I'm trying to think if an alien would kind of name human beings like an ant, what would it name human beings? I think it would, the extraterrestrials maybe, like this is of course hypothetical and abstract, but I'm saying like extraterrestrials will probably call us the silly ones, or the blind, not blind, but the confused, not confused. They would call us the boxed creatures, because we have boxed ourselves not only in physical reality but subjective reality. This it's as if, people don't realize this part of the world that we are active in as intelligence. This is like the most rare part of a museum gallery. We are the first to enter the void. And when I say the first to enter the void, we are the ambassadors of this universal sector, not just the species. This is why I'm saying, let to all parents, tell your child to become a universal being, not just to be somebody in some society where the definitions are shifted by cultural engineers before the child has a chance to even know what's going on. This world of ours is like turbulent weather, but what will happen is that 8 billion human beings, upon the sudden recognition of the advanced technology that their intelligence is, they will seek to activate it. And what will happen is that it's as if you tell the species, a great mystery has arrived, a great mystery has arrived. You're running in the streets with, your linguistic lantern, shouting. And so the species suddenly looks at itself, and every human being begins to wonder about the relationship of their intelligence with the known and the unknown, the relationship of their intelligence being in the known and the unknown, and the relationship of intelligence beyond the known and the unknown. That is our future. Our birthright is to go beyond death. Why? Because concepts break before reality enters the room. That would be the sign of some sort of, I would say, true divine or some sort of advanced extraterrestrial contact, where your language shifts in the moment. That beyond the language that has caged us to the inner, to the images painted on the inner walls of the mind. On the outer walls, man is not God, but he can be. And what I mean by this is that not that we reach the ultimate state of existence or creation as the but it is in some sense recognizing that before a person gets enlightened, a universe is happening, and it's enlightenment, the biggest, I would say, enlightenment on this earth, that we are being a universe simultaneously as we're being individuals. Sometimes my mind animates hypothetical situations in the future of our species where we're making contact with extraterrestrials. I have fathomed, I have some days where I just look at this world and I'm like, okay, let's say like tomorrow a fleet of advanced extraterrestrials landed on Earth. What would human beings do? How would we have a sort of communication platform for the individual human being with multidimensional beings? And then I realized we have a language built on a singular dimension. What that means is we think that there is one kind of language, and even though sometimes when I give these talks, I talk about the linguistic simulation as if we're all inside a world. But what it is that there are 4 dimensions, and these 4 dimensions can each have their own language, plus the relationship between the dimensions can create infinite languages. What that means is there are certain, ultimately what communication is intelligence moving. We can feel various emotions in this life, changing our self-generated memory-based narrative, to ourselves. We can, in some sense, change our life by looking at something differently. And I don't know how many human beings realize that if you are free, it must mean that your mind is free, not just your body, not just that the person attained the outer realms success, but in some sense the person aims to see what can intelligence do. One idea that shouldn't in some sense be forgotten is puzzles. I just right now thinking about it, I'm probably gonna write a fantasy sci-fi story about the prophet of the puzzles. And what I mean by that is that the mysteries of the realm don't invite man into narratives. They are trying to invite man beyond narratives. So I thought that if extraterrestrial consciousness somehow landed, and let's say we had like a team of like the most observant human beings kind of go and communicate with these extraterrestrials, and the first thing we'd recognize is how naked we are, how naked the human intelligence is to other dimensions. And what that means is how deeply can the extraterrestrial perceive us. And on another level, we would have to see, we would have to be successful in communicating our history to it. Because in the Islamic tradition, I remember in my youth, I was born in Iran, and that's a theological society. I remember something I heard from my grandparents, I heard from my father, I had heard from my mother, uncle, aunts, everybody pretty much, where they told me, treat a guest as if it is divine. And you could totally see where this idea comes from. This idea comes from the notion that people back in the day were in villages. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't go anywhere because there was nowhere to go to. The world was unexplored and they had access to their little vicinity, right? And then when a traveler would come to town, everybody in the town would be like, no way, this is like an alien arriving. A human being we've never seen before. And there was a fascination there. It's as if you were welcoming the new before rejecting it because the past made you to. Our future is not only cyber, it is not only neo-geometric, it is not only interstellar. Our future is also now. That means, if we believe in time travel, it literally means time travelers are looking at us right now. That means any institution on this planet that attempts to create a time travel device, I am telling you, the moment you create a time travel device, by definition of that invention, in some sense a time traveler would have made it. So what I mean is, this world is so fascinating that we circle through contexts, even though the body makes us be the same subject in various modes, So to have an attitude that divinity is moving outside of you, and divinity, another, I would say, modern term for divinity is novelty, but novelty that is from nature. Because there will come a time where human beings will be like, do we really have to fight the machines right now? Like, there will come that time in the future, but the strategy is to be so smart as a species that even if enemies land on Earth, it is more advantageous for them to become our friends. That is the strategy of the species. So what it means is, if let's say an extraterrestrial comes, first question, here, I'll just share the questions that come to my mind in this scenario, right? If extraterrestrials were there and a team went to approach them, the team would have to, in some sense, first of all, be peaceful in state of mind, completely peaceful in state of mind, the representatives of our species, right? And so, not with a complete peaceful state of mind, we have to go engage that extraterrestrial and first realize what percentage of it is embodied and disembodied. The human being, a tiny percentage of it is this body. That means you are right now the tip of an iceberg. We are an elemental tip of the iceberg of an intelligence that is oceanic, right? But if you were to comprehend its oceanic nature, if you were to comprehend the supreme, there would be no other archetype. So supremacy is an attempt towards singularity, but if the path of cruelty is taken, I will tell you, infinite dualism finds you, and that's another word for hell. And when I say hell, I mean inefficiency. Because I know that in every moment, if 8 billion human beings wanted to solve one person's problem, there would be endless answers, right? But we don't have that interconnectivity yet, simply because we don't have trust. And the reason we don't have trust is because the outer realm society has become a domain of artificial psychological performance. And what that means is people are forgetting that we have one life to be real, but the artificial has an allure, you know, and it is because the species is not, in some sense, awakened to the intensity of the existential dilemma, right? That means there was a time where I felt judged by my own past. Then I was like, what am I doing? We are on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Who knows what? You know, and that kind of makes you take life seriously, with an intensity of trying to find where the intelligence is happening. I would say in that hypothetical situation with the extraterrestrial, we would also require to show it a film. So the best thing we could do if the extraterrestrial has eyes is to make all the filmmakers in the world gather around to make one film, to one great masterpiece of a film that explains human history perfectly. Anybody who watches that film, they will know the whole planet's history, right? And what has happened and what state of mind we're in, right? And if we, through that film, can show the extraterrestrial, and the extraterrestrial looks at that film and sees we are standing and decided that we're showing it a film, right? And let's say the extraterrestrial is not stupid in the sense that it's going to think the film is another one of us. But we will, on a giant screen, show extraterrestrials, in some sense, the realities we have lived through as creatures, right? And then it becomes chess, psychological chess. If the psychological chess game is not played well, in some sense it becomes violence. That means, they say, Isaac Asimov, one of the most incredible science fiction writers, not just science fiction writers, he's just an incredible human being. He was a scientist, and he had this quote where he said, "Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent." What that means is when a species or any being or creature gets violent, is because their mind does not have the skill or the intelligence or the patience to try to find a more peaceful route, right? Because peace is an intelligent thing. You know, when you look at the lack of intelligence, it goes to becoming an animal. This is why the most vicious people, you know, on the planet, the intellectual communities of the world, they're like, what is this animal doing? And what they mean is that you are choosing to live as a cruel mind, a cruel body, or a compassionate mind. And the power of compassion and peacefulness is so great because it activates what I would say the winds of evolution in your inner realms. It's as if there is a test, but this test is not an exam on paper. This test is how the earth accepts us. How the Gaian mind, you know, the Terra soul embraces what has emerged, right? Because I will tell you, your inner realms are the most sophisticated art studio. That's a good metaphor for it. It's like your own private office, your own private universe, where in that private universe you engage reality and its meaning arises there. So I can tell that even though I am a biological being, let's say the brain is copying the outer realm. So that means, let's say a person walks to the grocery store, the brain's like, yeah, I'm in a world walking into a grocery store. That's the first simulation, the first copy or first Photoshop layer of what the mind does with the brain. It creates the same world to itself. So that means the inner realms, usually for the average human being, is in accord to primarily first with the outer realms. So that means your first imagination is actually non-imagination. The mind is trying to reflect the outer realms. Now the second wave, I would say the second layer of imagination, or what happens there, is that person going to the grocery store. Let's say it took them 10 minutes, and in every minute of them walking to that grocery store, their mind fathomed a totally different location. That means you were walking to the grocery store, but then you thought about if you would ever step on the first teleportation device. Your mind can jump, right? So that's the thing, that it's not this. This is why the educational system's creativity is in a paralysis, because it thinks methodology means going from A to B to C to D, and that's it. Methodology is jumping. It's in teleporting in your inner realms. The person's going to the grocery store, sees a beautiful girl, and then suddenly teleports into his future. You know what I mean? So the mind creates location while in a location, but there is an observer of the inner realms as well, and the observer of the inner realm and outer realm is the same point. It's as if saying at the center of the circle, the center of the coin is both head and tails. Like, you can't say it's only heads or tails. It's a philosophical mystery. Dear listeners and fellow species members, advancement comes when we have found the best probability. And what that means is the mind is simulating possibility all the time, but when it simulates a possibility where it has the greatest certainty in accordance to a comparison to its past, the mind implements. So what is going on is that we are actually walking in behind our eyes, and then the body walks. The body has a delay from the instantaneity of reality in the inner realms. In my mind, I can see myself grabbing a glass from the cupboard, but in my inner realms, I have already grabbed the glass. The body then slowly follows. So the mind is ahead of the body, and this is important to recognize. Now, through let's say meditation, what one is trying to do is trying to make their body still and silent as possible to watch what happens to their mind if they don't input anything. That means, imagine your mind is a keyboard, and every time a person thinks, supposedly they're clicking one of the keys on the keyboard. Now meditation would mean that you've been your whole life typing recklessly on a keyboard, and now for the first time you got to stop typing on the keyboard and look at the keyboard. And the keyboard is your brain, your intelligence, and we can't see our brain because reality is specifically designed, right? Reality is designed in a way where our eyes open outward, not inward, So the eyes cannot see without a sort of space for the contrast of light and darkness to, in some sense, shape the picture, right? So the mind is very fascinating, and the eyes are a stargate. What are they a stargate to? Our eyes take in light, and to recycle that light. Our eyes recycle light into symbolism, into imagery, and it's all happening in your inner space, in your inner realms, right? And without an honesty, that means imagine as an advanced civilization where people are like, no way, you're telling me I can be honest in this civilization, with no consequences, I don't have to, try to, through greed, always, win the Hunger Games. And so reality becomes a peaceful, intelligent advancement rather than a hurried, inefficient advancement. So, let me see. Pretty much an aim to prepare our species and to fathom an event in the future where everyone, upon recognition that we're antennas, stops judging the type of antenna and begins actually utilizing the signals received. So we become, for the first time, a global tribe of universally inspired, contexted beings. That means if an extraterrestrial landed on Earth and asked every human being, who are you? That every human being, in the future will be like, I am a member of, Gaia, the Gaian tradition, or I would say I am a member of the civilization of Earth. Do you see? That's how we would represent ourselves, Seldom do they say love is freedom, and freedom means non-interference, and non-interference means you were never there. So you see, we can say there are either no aliens or there are aliens so compassionate, that they in some sense did not want to disturb us. And the extraterrestrials that have disturbed us in our, in the archetypes of society, they in some sense have not been extraterrestrials. They have been as limited as us. They have not been there. Like there are extraterrestrials, then they are less than terrestrials. Intelligent archetypes that are inferior to the human archetype in intelligence. By the way, guys, in the chat section, please you gotta tell me if anybody's responding to a subject. The person has to make it clear, because I scroll through the talk, like I move to different moments in the talk. So in any just write this here. I'll show this to the audience. Talk about something, just explain its context and I can give you a quick response. If the question is general, then it's like the response automatically becomes it's from the divine back in the day. That means there was like pretty much God, aliens, then a king, then the common man. So the king, for me, is actually a divine archetype because it is in some sense a unique reality among an ocean, right? So what it is that extraterrestrials would talk to kings back in the day. Now it's probably governments. Like you could totally see a polite extraterrestrial just coming to the leaders of humanity and being like, hey, what's happening here on this planet? So what I'm saying is we universalize. 8 billion beings for the first time universalize, and if they asked 8 billion human beings, what are you doing in your outer realms, we would say advancing civilization. And then if they ask, what are you doing in the inner realms, we're advancing communication, because we are found in a changing world. That means that even if extraterrestrials come, even if gods manifest in human form in the future, avatars awaken, if they even come and they come to the human species and they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing in this world, human species? We would in some sense respond that we have reached as a species a level of comprehension of not just human intelligence, of intelligence in general, in the sense that we are found in an infinitely changing world. So even if it's an alien, it is prone to change. Even if it is a godly form, there is in some sense change, because our languages change. The language of change is the effort of the intelligence's form. So what I'm trying to say is that it's not that human beings are beyond the divine. It's just that we are as divine as everything that is standing in the void. Your divinity is not in comparison to gods of certain traditions with certain imagery. Your divinity is in contrast to, in the void, something is moving. Yo. In the chat section, wowsy. Guys, I'm just going to say the first letter of every name. That's easier. W says, what do you think about psychedelics and the prospect of becoming who you really are and not fall in the trap of taking symbols for reality? Okay, so just a quick breather. I'm going to go on a tangent to answer your question. W. I would say, so here's the thing, right? Shamanism is an ancient lineage. To explain it is very complex. To even then try to explain a shamanic attitude and how our ancestors behaved in accordance to nature, that is a very complex route. But unless you're a person in an Amazonian tribe, right, the approach has to consider the context of modern civilization, right? So there was a very great man by the name of Terence McKenna. Let's call him Terence the Great, And Terence McKenna, he in some sense was trying to keep the shamanic algorithm. He had observed something from a technology that was from a civilization that was being lost. That means Terence McKenna, of course, was an ethnobotanist, so he was a person trying to preserve the unique relationship that human beings had with the plant kingdom. The kings of man had with the plant kingdom. Right? So now what the thing is, that if you take in the context I'm saying, the Mr.Withinian context of your antennas, right, you could say, sure, there could be, because the brain is a sort of neurochemical jar, sure, the antenna can change, right? But the quality of the antenna can change. But at the same time, what is the purpose of an antenna? What do you do after you have realized that the life is beyond language, and on a rock in the middle of nowhere, we have been creating our own meaning? What do you do as a creature, right? So what you do is you become responsible for as far deep as you become responsible for the depth of all dimensions of your perception, and in the aim of becoming totally responsible for your intelligence, you become an explorer of your intelligence, right? Because what is going on is different DNAs or different antennas, and these antennas are going through different states. Terence McKenna even made an incredible point of saying that culture is a hallucination, that we are like a bunch of creatures living in a society. That is a hallucination. It's inner realm kept. That means the laws of societies are in the inner realms. The meanings of reality are in the inner realms. Our likes and dislikes are in the inner realms. But what is in the outer realms is just atoms disguised as the story of man. So what it is every person, especially with an atheistic context, there is a danger there. That means I was thinking, if the world is transcendental and the atheistic movement has denied the multidimensional, in the context of the human psyche, it would be in some sense dangerous for atheism. And not dangerous, but it is like an empty room. That means, do you want to live in the emptiness of meaning, or do you want to live in the direct experience of animate meaning? Right? So there's a difference. I would say that a psychedelic experience would be a phone call to the planet. So what do you do with a phone call? You use its contents to advance your life, and to recognize that there are hidden mysteries left, and we are in the pioneering phase of developing the relationship of a species with its collective space. That means for the first time, intelligence is not lost to matter. It's as if people think the periodic table is God. And Buddhists feel the periodic table is reincarnating as suffering. But suffering is not suffering when novelty is. When the new comes, what can the past say? This is why, me personally, I think many people should do this, is that to explain modern reality to the elderly. Excuse me. When universities, I'll start from here. When universities talk about advanced civilizations, that's when I'll know, my podcast has been heard. The advancement of anything has to be an observance of the system, has to then be a pinpointing of yourself and your observance of the system. And in some sense, then it's, I would say, co-living. We are living together in the simulation of a future that has efficiently utilized its intelligent resources. So W says, thank you for your answer. I don't think I fully answered it, but let me give it one more try, and then let's see. What do you think about psychedelics and the prospect of becoming who we really are and not from the trap of... based on your wording, the trap of taking symbols for reality, it's a trap if you feel trapped, right? Trap is an archetype. That means, let's say you are let's say a skydiver, right? And you have the skydiver archetype. You jump into the sky and you hit your parachute, and the parachute doesn't open in the first try. So you feel you're trapped, right? So the skydiver archetype changes to the trapped archetype, right? But then if the person is submissive to the inefficient image of the moment, then the greater opportunity never arises. But suddenly this, let's say, skydiver suddenly hits the parachute again and it opens. So it just needed a second try, right? But if in the first try the skydiver thought he was trapped and the parachute wouldn't open, he would never know, right? So in life we have to have a ridiculous effort to go forth, but to go work forth as long as we can get a certain conclusion, I would say that enlightenment is beyond form. So it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what state you are, it's just something that is noticed as the whole moment, right? It's kind of saying like what's in your moment of awareness is good or bad, but what the whole moment of your awareness can't be good or bad, right? So the archetypes of being entrapped is limited to the individualism you entertain, so if you go into the psychedelic experience thinking that you are something specific, then there will be, of course, hallucinatory in intensity. But if you go into that state in the sense of you are the whole moment, then there is no fear. So another W in the chat section says, we've become badass, bro, independent from all but myself, oneness in original authentic source and all. Yeah, but keep in mind, oneness is 1/4 of reality, right? Emptiness is 1/4 of reality. Duality is 1/4 of reality. Infinity is 1/4 of reality. And these are like the 4 seasons of existential activity. So I am telling you, there are moments where you will feel you are everything, and that's okay. There will be moments in this life where you will feel like nothing, and that's okay. And there will be moments in this life where you will feel like everything, or you will feel separate, and that's okay. And there will be a moment where you will feel infinite, and that is okay. And when you understand it's okay to be a simple, just natural being, that means the bird on the branch, had no anxiety or depression or any sort of mental identification of an illness, because ultimately you are regenerating your intelligence in every moment, right? So it's like a pulse-based system where we inhale, exhale, right? And our eyelids open and close. That is the human being, right? And so what that means is intelligence has to be evoked. So we are like a pulsing antenna. And so what it means is you can receive things through your inhalation and you can receive things through an exhalation. I'm that person saying, if let's say there was important news, let's say aliens had landed and they were chill, right? And suddenly somebody runs to their friend and they're like, yo, chill aliens landed, enlightened aliens landed on the planet, that person would suddenly, the inner realms would reanimate. And we have to have reanimate compassion. We have to have a compassion in any moment, and especially this should happen in the work sector and in professional fields where whatever, let's say 2 people are in conversation, and then one person, they suddenly go below the level of like functionability in their intelligence. Let's say the person is at a party and they get drunk, or let's say a person is chemically influenced. So their performance in their inner realms, their energy is pretty much going more to their mind than their body. So the body's function is not in rhythm to like the context of the moment, right? So in those situations, there should just be silence. Right? This is true level, I would say, a species attaining advanced communicator status. Like that's when it's like silence. We are comfortable with the silence as much as we're comfortable with sounds. And we're not comfortable just receiving silence and receiving sounds, but we're comfortable in some sense being it as well, right? Because that is true charisma. When I was younger, I saw some videos of some great leaders give speeches, and I was like, yo, look at that charisma. But then I was like, what is charisma? And I realized charisma is you having a vision behind your eyes that is more important than whatever the result of your behavior. That means the idea is so much more important than who is sharing it, that forget about who's sharing it. Run to the idea, run to how the vision is crucial. That means I honestly in the future don't mind in the future people kind of relating to these ideas of the podcast, because the whole aim is to transform a collective picture, not an individual picture. it's like, it's like a spiritual person realizing they have past lives in their life, and the person's like, you're telling me I've had eons of past lives and I'm just figuring that out, and the yogi in the Himalayas is like, yeah man, yeah, and guess what, you also have future lives, so you have to also be present in the moment to have a relationship with the intelligence of the moment. That presence is through how you access it. I personally access it through a simplistic silliness. I don't know, it's as if like I think how it is when somebody does something and they get an emotion about their own action. So in my youth, I had done some silly things that in some sense my primary inhabited emotion as an archetype was in some sense so simple that it was as if the blessing of being invisible in a world where where everything is unhidden, So that was the very unique thing, I would say, that as karma goes forth, the rhythms of our mind unfold. There is an honor to being alive, and I don't know why globally this is not being acknowledged, that all those human beings, whether efficient technology is engaged or inefficient technology, whether this technology is in the inner realm or the outer realm, but any person that makes it to the next day, we should have a celebration. Imagine every day, right, that goes forth, even though night and day is our creation as an idea. But I'm saying, imagine every day, at the end of the day, in every workplace, imagine this becomes mandatory, that every, business, let's say entrepreneur, influential entrepreneur goes to their team and says everybody for 2 minutes has to clap at the end of the workday. And everybody stands and everybody claps for everyone. Imagine that happens, Imagine we start creating, a samurai level of compassionate honor for an advanced civilization. Like that shit. Guys, somebody says it's good to hear your voice. I'll tell you, another reason why I felt like doing the talks, because I felt we're going through the corona phase, right? We're going through the second black plague, It's like biochemical warfare, People think wearing a mask is like a simple thing, When I wear a mask outside, I feel like, okay, this mask in probably 20 years is going to become some advanced, health suit, right? Something in life will ultimately activate. I feel if you are a conscious mind, the universe values that. That means all the intelligence in this universal sector is whoa, a human being is born that can communicate and can be inspired by its world. That means imagine in a universe where all drops are the same ocean, and in some sense there is such a level of oneness that there is no individualism. How boring would that be? That means imagine the duality is how eternity was bored, and in some sense a game was simulated in the void. Inner realm contact is happening all the time, by the way, and let me tell you how I I'm thinking about this. I am saying, okay, the divine is the unknown, the extraterrestrial archetype is the unknown, the God archetype is the unknown, the mythological entities, narrative languages in the unknown, right? So what I'm saying is that I am a human being looking at this world, realizing there so many things are happening in an unknown way, and our species has made a certain level of progress in trying to know things around it, right? But every human being has a responsibility to be an advanced explorer of the realm, and in some sense bring that feedback somehow. That means wherever you are, whatever life you have lived, if you have perceived something that only your eyes have allowed you to see, and you feel the civilization will advance in sharing it, now the world is going into the, I would say, the era of advanced communication, where we are no longer here to be an object, right? So to work with the subject, people are working with it in different cultural contexts, What that means is the mind identifies with its environment. Guys, this episode features guest a guest podcaster known as The Wind. The Wind is also giving a talk here, If the wind speaks louder than me, let me know in the chat section. But what I'm saying is that the winds of evolution have brought the human animal and has trained the human animal in time, and now this human animal, armed with time and imagery overlayability on space or in space, this creature now must walk the path of the transcended animal. And this is what I meant by the subtitle, post-liberation communication. That means we master as a species the four fathomable dimensions of reality. We find a way to make human beings content with emptiness. We find a way to make human beings content with individuality and the collective singularity. We make human beings in some sense content with duality, chaos, and order, are as much of citizens in the world as we are. The world moves in various ways, and to build an advanced civilization means to reclaim the unconscious and conscious territory. It is the greatest task of the human species. It is the roar of the mind, at the end of time. In the chat section, a question has arose. W says, are you familiar with the I Ching? If yes, what are your thoughts on what it implicates for the nature of reality? I would tell you the I Ching, if I was to put it in a sentence, was Lao Tzu's way of telling China to relax 1,000 years ago. And what I mean by this is that the I Ching is like a human being, is like Lao Tzu trying to take people's inner realms to a state of paradoxical balance. To a state where the person stops the inefficient, so only efficiency remains. Guys, I need a quick intermission. I'll be back. So I would say the I Ching is making the person through silence realize the simplicity of totality. That simplicity of totality is the ultimate. Once you are the ultimate and you stop the distraction, then in some sense it is truth accessible. So I would say the I Ching is a very advanced map for a human being to pilot into the ultimate, beyond concept. Lorna says, Mr. Within, how does one know they have information that others don't yet? L in the chat section says, how does one know they have information that others don't yet? Okay. Well, in the outer realms, if you don't hear anything, you don't have information others have. If you don't see or hear anything, you don't have information, or you're not observant, you don't have information of others. And in the inner realms, if you have memories are an example of you having information of others, right? So as long as you have access to memory, you can know others, you know. So the way you know you have memory, you have information that others don't yet, is to be observant of your inner space. So yeah, guys, just information means something is in a formation, some sort of intelligence that is at first unknown, but upon engagement familiarized, you know. You have to observe what you are. This is the basic. Everybody who's climbed this mountain then can start climbing the mountains of truly how to ride the waves of the inner realms. As the wind as my witness, our civilization will advance and it will activate dimensions unfathomable now. So one thing I know that the future has an advantage of, like that's why I sometimes very comfortably give these talks, because for me the future cannot fail. Why? Because its definition of failure is based on its attitude. Right, so if we just get a proper attitude towards building the most advanced human event, this advanced civilization 2.0, life is incredible. Is the greatest teacher. There's no such thing as even a teacher, because your whole moment, you're learning from your whole moment. Because you learn from your whole moment. What that means is, let's say a classroom of kids and a teacher, the teacher is every other person in the room. The mind learns as a space where it tries to engage design, and there has to be an unknown thrust from within into the world, because that's how we become animate, right? And some people consciously live and some people unconsciously, and it's not that consciousness is there 24/7. You could say the novice meditator was trying to be in a certain way all the time. The advanced meditator has realized nature is just present. Do you know what I mean? Nature is happening. Right now, people can have any thought on the moment, and I am existentially just being what I'm existing as, right? So the freedom of just existing. It's like we have so much freedom existing, you know? But change is like, you know, giving us commands of a different direction. And, you know, I wondered at some point, why are all the ancient wisdom traditions actually saying love is the ultimate? Why? right? Why not just a design advancement? Then I realize why love is important is because love is the aftermath of freedom. It's like once nature is free, it in some sense the highest quality of creation sets forth. It means all institutions being like, yo, what are we doing? Freedom, that's the aim. And we seek a freedom where abilities can come forth towards a global stage of trying to find the greatest ideas on the planet. In the future, I hope this happens. I will run towards this idea, but I will tell you, I feel in the future there will be a TV channel where when you open this TV channel, there is literally, how would I tell you, a channel that is just showing how the whole planet is advancing. That means it's like, call it the inspiration channel, whatever. You just turn on that channel and you just see do you know what I mean? Like, imagine sleeping and waking up and realizing 8 billion different types of activities have been done that day. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so remarkable how much progress there is and how much this progress is disconnected from a global network of appreciation. Love is, in some sense, pure freedom. From there, it arises. And it has no shape. We think that everything has to be an idea. Everything has to have a symbol, Just like a teacher would tell us don't sleep in the classroom, Ludwig Wittgenstein told the world the limits of my language are the limits of my world. So what I'm saying is that, how does language evolve? Do the birds and the squirrels come and evolve human language? No, it's only through the use of the human life, right? And we should treat ourselves, as the Yoga Patanjali Sutra says, as a glass sphere rolling upon different colored surfaces. That means, I don't know how even people are trying to fall in love. It's in some sense, we are on some level just pure energetic presence simultaneous with an attention through a sort of background image narrative. Truth is emergence through singular points. And what that means is that it's like Sherlock Holmes, Iron Man, and let's say a Viking, suddenly spoke to a yogi. And they suddenly realized they were all masked. One was masked by history. One was masked by technology, and one was masked by himself. So reality right now is an abstract illusion. It's literally a painting that we have to keep, every time we engage it, to keep repainting, I don't know, guys, I'm just trying to constantly create context how from a singular mode of living we're constantly going to a multidimensional one. The multidimensional one means that there is no judgment. That's what I meant by the transcendent animal. And what I mean by like the whole inner realm contact, the whole idea was to kind of share with the audience that right now people have different relationships with the world behind their eyes. Some people have it in a sort of unique geometry where their life is a sort of ritualistic code to activate a higher dimension, or a ceremonial code to activate the higher dimension. And there are those who are, let's say, more in the artistic field where they are actually looking at the whole field rather than zooming in to an idea, right? So what I mean is, like, people have different relationships. There's people in the New Age community who right now think they're aliens right now. You know, there are people who think they in some sense don't exist. We call those physicists, you know. And there are people who feel like, for example, they in some sense are God, you know. It's as if they don't exist because something else does. That totality, unfathomable totality does, right? That's the whole religious angle, right? Where they're saying the ultimate is here first, then us, but from a sort of secular perspective, the world is here first, then any other idea, right? So it's a sort of two people trying to play chess on different chessboards, you know. They're each on their own chessboard. You know, I have been around a cultural context where people had not only entertained souls. I have literally had conversations with people who that person felt they were an eternal being. Just like how we casually, just so chill and relaxed, casually accept we're a temporary, like, human organism, right? This person, the same level of chillness, you know, the same level of, state of mind, had the opposite view that they were eternal. So imagine you, right now, your whole life you have been considering you're a temporary being, but for a moment you realize you're an unconditional, intelligent mind space. So if you consider that, the fear of the body goes away, and it's more like how you navigate in form rather than what information is, you know. You know, the only thing that I want to see is, to be honest, this may be a bit blunt of me to say, but it's like, I honestly feel it's none of my business to tell individuals what to do, but it is my business as an individual, my responsibility as a human being to attempt the ultimate. Right, the ultimate probability. I mean, like, life is like a battery, you know, and this battery has to be used for something, has to in some sense enter a system, activate it, and in some sense have a sort of expansion of human evolution, right? So for me, I have decided that okay, let's try to see, you know, not the path taken by or the path less taken by, you know, or the path not traveled by, the path that is just most advanced thing you can do in the situation. I feel the idea of the advanced civilization, the passion that I have for it is because it is the only option in the future. What else can we do outside? In front of our eyes, the coolest thing we can do is build an advanced civilization. The most incredible thing we can do. It's literally like, the Tower of Babylon 2.0. And instead of trying to access a religious heavens, we are trying to access an Aristotelian heaven. We are just trying to see beyond, right? People in their inner realms, culturally, you know, there are some people in the spirit, in context, in social context of spiritualism, where they feel they have, for example, spirit guides. You know, people all feel they're communicating in their mind space with some sort of angel, demon, alien, whatever, right? And so I've noticed this is happening, and it is in some sense very playful because the mind is an instrument. So what you see is what you're doing with it, right? It's like how you're holding yourself in the moment as a moment of awareness. So I would say extraterrestrial contact, or let's say not extraterrestrial contact, unknown variable contact. Let's say in any moment of life that something happens that doesn't make, linearized, objective, realistic sense, right? So anytime a person perceives that, instead of believing what the mind has overlaid onto the moment, they have to in some sense reset the moment, right? That means in any moment of internal disturbance, any moment of turbulence. So what that means is, let's say a person is thrown, let's say an advanced extraterrestrial suddenly teleports on Earth, takes this one person and teleports into a planet where there's a war, there's a battlefield, and throws this person in the middle of this totally different extraterrestrial battlefield where two advanced extraterrestrial species are fighting, and this person somehow survives through some sort of way of functioning in the battlefield, and then the extraterrestrial takes them back and brings them back here. For example, imagine I'm just creating some sort of sci-fi fantasy setting here, right? Thought experiment. And so that person, in returning on Earth, will recognize that teleportation means the past was your mind, right? So it would become a totally different thing where it's as if your mind is a hidden painter, and if you look at it closely, you suddenly notice its paintings, If you find the source of yourself, which Sri Ramana Maharshi, in his method, he said, just ask, who am I? He was like, for the love of God, people, just look in the mirror and be like, who am I? And you'll be suddenly inspired to discover what is going on here as intelligence. Like, it's not that hard, So L in the chat section says, what do you think about multiple parallel universes and different vibration yet on this world, but we can't see that frequency? Okay. So first of all, that's the same as seeing an invisible other. So who says the logos has to just be in humanized form, right? The logos could suddenly be an inner event. That means somebody, let's say, in this life remembering their past life, how do they know that's not a divine intervention, or it's actually like they're just, as suddenly remember another theater room they were in. For me, the whole point of this is that we have to become responsible for our minds, for our inner realms, and there isn't general knowledge on how to become responsible for it. And because we're all different in design, obviously there can't be a one for all like strategy. So what that leaves us is treating our mind as a commander. And every day you wake up, the sensory universe is saying, welcome back, Commander. Not in the sense that you have to command things, just like not the connotation of the image, in the sense that the mind has to discover how complex it can create truth. And when it reaches it and sees that is not true, it suddenly, in some sense, as the poet Rumi says, why prefer to crawl through life when you were born with wings? And that wings, he's not talking about like bird wings or angel wings. He's talking about your mind, your additional dimension of consciousness, that all the other animal species are like, yo, these monkeys are seeing so much more than us. What the fuck? If animals speak, they would just ask us, how are you guys so advanced? Explain this to us. When I was scrolling through this wallpaper site where I choose the pictures for these episodes, I don't know what was about this picture. There was something so, I don't know who drew it. It was just there on the wallpaper site. But it was like, whoever made this illustration, there is something so incredible about it that I felt it was like it deserves to be talked about. Right? And what it is that Sometimes our future can be clothed in shadow and light. So what that means is hope is light, hopelessness is darkness. And in the inner realms, a person's state will suggest where they are located in the inner realms. Like an advanced intelligence. Like an asteroid. Or a meteor hitting Earth. And this meteor hits Earth, right? But it doesn't hit the outer Earth; it hits the inner Earth, right? And what that means is it's like a complete context shift. Like, who are we kidding? Everybody is literally like a monkey would jump from a branch to branch, like our evolutionary ancestors were jumping from idea to idea in accordance to our newest experience. So there is no such thing as a person having a belief system, because even if they sleep, let's say you believe in something and then you wake up tomorrow, you are become a different self. So you can no longer believe yesterday because there is today here, and you cannot just believe in today because there will be tomorrow, right? So that leads us in recognizing that even if we come to the here and now, our responsibility in the outer realms is to still engage the unknown to evolve the known. That is it. So I'm just saying, hey, humanity, we could be anything we want, but how about we try to rekindle a sort of last stance of humanity against the void dilemma? Let's try to simulate. It's as if we are a species. I'm saying, why doesn't the species try to practice at least how it would be like to be in an advanced civilization? What do we like? If an advanced civilization was an advanced martial art technique, it's like, how would we train for that, right? And I'm saying, how would the species train for its ultimate extinction scenario? How will it come up with a strategy before the curtains are pulled that we are the ones who fly beyond the theater? So what is the effort? To envision the future means to give imagination total freedom, because the future can be anything. The past is the only thing that has an issue with truth. The present can't have an opinion, and the future is a completely different scene. That means the most thing that always in any scenario where I freak out, I've freaked out in this life, there's something that has calmed me down, was this recognition, like, oh yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna wake up again, and that just calms the person, that you realize life in whatever manner the simulation, it's like however way the world treated you, you realize it's endlessly like seashores, being rekindled. It's like a candle lit for a day, then it's blown out. Then it's lit for a day, then blown out. Lit for a day, blown out. And so samadhi and enlightenment and moksha and nirvana, these ideas were like, you can get to a state where you watch your body, watch your mind, and realize that watcher is nothing that everything can be. It's as if the person's like, what did you meet in your inner realms? And the person's like, I meant the nothing. I meant nothing, And what I mean is that the void is as profound as the infinite. It's just we don't realize it. And when it comes to public social policy, I have no choice but to speak as an infinitist. That means my ultimate context is that we are an infinite intelligence. Our character is literally our selection of imagery in accordance to what was more meaningful to us in this life, right? So more and more we're realizing we're not a brain, having thoughts. we are a whole moment of awareness, like a glow of a candle, and the mind is the most initial, is the source provider of the vision of reality, right? So it's as if our brain is the candle flame, our brain is the wick of the candle flame is consciousness, and the body is the wax of the candle, and the cosmos is the darkness of the room, and the glow of the candle flame is life's meaning. And some nights, some days on this planet, the light may be flickering, and in some days it may not, Honestly, I sometimes have existential panic attacks, but these existential panic attacks are not extreme or something intense is happening. It's like literally in my inner realms, whatever I'm doing in life for a moment, I just stop and I'm like, oh yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere. Do you see the biggest reason why honesty is the most advanced approach? Because whatever you are, its fullest is revealed. Because it's tiring, right? Civilization is now going through a syrup apocalypse. That means it's like somehow sugar, like the Black Plague and Corona, has invaded human, lifestyle. It's as if literally, if animals were, we're literally like acting like an insect. Oh my god, we're eating so much sugar as a species where it's like we're behaving like insects, and so it's as if like we have to completely retaliate. You know what I think it is? It's as if in the movie 2012, and what I would say was an incredible film, even though its production was the unique art of its own director, but I will say in 2020, the movie, there was a scene where this country went to all the other, what do you call it? All the other, it's like there was pretty much, they went into villages looking for engineers to build this giant, extinction scenario boat, right? So in that movie, there was that kind of scenario where they were looking for those who had an ability to help build something, right? This world is changing. That means who I am right now sharing this talk is changing. Who you are listening to this talk is changing. So the ultimate response of consciousness, the only thing, not the only thing, but what we can do in our inner realms as the human species is to become comfortable with change and to become content through understanding reality. This is the thing that power misses out, Power in the outer realms is victorious, but in the blind power in the outer realms is victorious, but in the inner realms it missed out on the divine signal. It missed out on a simpler level that the species had to function, right? That means human beings for the first time have to consciously build a heaven. We have to build paradise on earth, but it has to do in the modern sense of every efficient possibility prioritized first. And efficiency means to the deepest level of context, I'll call it contextuality, do you know what I mean? The deepest levels. What I mean is you are like, okay, I am an intelligent being, how far do I see? And then instantaneous, that's the power of honesty. It allows instantaneous observation. Like an infinite light beam, or like carbonated water. As global conscious inner realm management takes place and 8 billion human beings begin one by one noticing that their mind is a rare opportunity and a rare angle We build a civilization with the fundamental principle that every person is rare. R-I-A-R-E. Why? Because nobody like them exists. So every person is a work of art. We are a giant art gallery. This artwork, elemental artwork, has become alive to itself, and inside this, after going through a phase of treating this whole art gallery as a picture, it started to treat the art gallery as a film, and it was in the dynamism of life where memory got a chance to be witnessed, to be remodeled. So I am telling you, behind your eyes, in accordance to the type of person you are, and you might be teleporting all over the place, as if the consciousness is a light being thrown in a, octagonal room of mirrors, or like in just like a hexagonal, or in a spherical mirror room. That's incredible. Imagine a light beam endlessly just reflecting in a spherical mirror, inside a spherical mirror. Oh my God. Imagine like the mirrors you see they have in these investigation shows they have on Netflix, right? That double-sided mirror. Imagine you create a spherical double-sided mirror and we somehow throw a light beam in there and close the sphere, and that light beam till the end of time is being reflecting in that sphere, And there could be other forces. I mean, we can try this experiment in outer space and we can try it on Earth, and probably it has different results, but I think that would be fascinating. The day human beings captured light in a spherical mirror. This is, I would say, what Mr.Within strategy. Ideas come from everywhere, guys. I'm telling you, the more we look, the more we see, the more the context grows. The more the context grows, the more the concept can change. The more the concept can change, free will is just left to its own decision to go forth into the reality. Right? So I'm saying, let's see, at least as human beings, try to see what the most advanced outcome looks like, because we're all different types of intelligence. That means if an alien comes, we'll be like, oh my God, this alien has as much individuality and uniqueness as like our celebrities, our people in history, right? So what that means is we're hilariously living in a world where, even though we're all the same human species, when we're all different people, respect the individual, honor the individual, more power to the individual. But what does that mean? That means if an alien comes, it's the same. It's as if you don't know another person, you don't know another extraterrestrial. You know what I mean? You don't know another terrestrial, you don't know another extraterrestrial. It's the same. But if we are to only hold the moment in individualism, if your state of mind and the inner witness establishes itself in a state beyond duality, okay, let me say it like this: if your inner realms, if your mind, if your attention goes to the zero dimension, emptiness, there is nothing here, and you are literally the dream of nothing. But if you go, and that's something where some people think emptiness is to fear, some people use emptiness for inspiration. When they see in the future something's not going to be around, they care to try to make it live on somehow. Let's say we have an extraterrestrial land on Earth, and this extraterrestrial somehow is very civilized and polite, and it tries to test us, okay? And this extraterrestrial says, I have a disembodied alien friend, another extraterrestrial species. Can you guys see him, right? And imagine the extraterrestrial tells you a hypothetical situation in the future, it tells humanity this, right? Then we would have to have like the most epic yogis go and sit down and close their eyes and try to see in their inner realms what is actually there. So just being able to be still and silent and try to, through just the purity, not purity, but through just the stillness of the mind, not try to see something, but watch what is happening in the moment. The extreme advancement is like a realization. Inner realm contact has to do with our ability to create a platform. That means in two different type of species, one from beyond the atmosphere, one from below the atmosphere. They're in a conversation, in some sort of communication dialogue, let's say. So if that was, let's say, hypothetically, that's what was happening, we would have to, as a species, have the capability to territorize, to chart the inner terra incognita. You know, so we wouldn't have to have an ability, just like those explorers back in the day who made great advancements for the species. We have to do the same now. The moment has a soul, and its soul is how far our eyes go. And our eyes are ready for liftoff, or I wouldn't be doing this podcast. I'm telling you, they have been ready for a while. The eyes are ancient, you know, but what the eyes see are modern. Post-liberation communication means free multidimensionality, you know. That means, imagine people are in the future protesting on the street. We are a multidimensional being. There's nobody just shaped by a sort of snapshot of individualism. The life is a dynamic truth, and what we can wake up to is just how we are, a universe in motion, you know. I want to read for you an epic poem. This poem is from a man named Rumi, and it's called Poem of the Atoms. So Rumi has done something in literature, is like so advanced. I don't know how to tell you. Like if I read it for you, you will see like how people in, you know, ancient Persia 700 years ago looked at life. Not ancient Persia, but I'll tell you this, like, the world is not an idea, it is an event. And when we treat history like an event, we cannot let the past judge the future out of possibility. So this is the poem. I found it, guys. So let me see if I should choose another song. Okay. I guess poetry is gonna speak now, guys. O day, arise. Shine your light. The atoms are dancing. Thanks to him, the universe is dancing, overcome with ecstasy. Free from body and mind. I'll whisper in your ear where their dance is leading them. All the atoms in the air and in the desert are dancing, puzzled and drunken to the ray of light. They seem insane. All these atoms are not so different than we are. Happy or miserable, perplexed and bewildered. bewildered. We are all beings in the ray of light from the beloved. Nothing can be said. That's where this guy ends his poem when he wrote it 700 years ago, you know? And what he's saying, that there is no personality, it's a vision of the world where every single part of this space-time continuum, this simulation, is the divine. So how you transcend individualism is through the singular, how you transcend the singular is through the dual, how you transcend the dual is through the infinite, how you transcend the infinite in some senses through the void, and vice versa it can happen. What that means is I can pretty much pinpoint a person's universal philosophy with a few questions in accordance to this model I've created. I call the 0, 1 to infinity thing the ring of the absent heaven. Reality is just phenomenal. It is a mystery we are breathing in. We are the living mystery. This song is too epic. Alright. Let me wrap this up. Every person's intelligence, unique in design. Sorry guys, there was technical difficulties on my side. I was looking at I had to reload the screen. Alright. Final thoughts. The mind is like a painter. Our memories and everything we know so far is like the paint we have access to. Our decisions that have an influence in the realm are like the paintbrush in the hand of like the hidden soul in the unhidden world, you know. So in some sense, we are painting our meaning in accordance to our most direct experiences. And when this is realized, we cannot treat ourselves as a thought where the most chillest idea is we are a transcendental antenna, you know. We are the eyes of the living universe, you know, giving a podcast, you know. But I think it's a responsibility every human being should share, because the opportunity is there. That is like the most simplest way to say it. That if you can fly, try out your wings. If your mind can honorably serve a better future, it's like this commander in this fictional character, commander in this show called Shingeki no Kyojin, where he says, life is not meaningless. Its meaning is that we live for those who will one day find the meaning. That means it's like a realm of questions, and then eventually the attention moves to a realm of answers, you know, and it experiences the era of efficiency. So that's pretty much my whole idea, that you wonder about your most advanced state of vision, then you realize the most, even more advanced than that, would be a sort of collective inspiration, you know, where your eyes find your world, you know, before they have forgotten. Thanks for listening, and